Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. So today we're tackling Isaiah chapters 13 through 23.
Buckle up, it's a wild ride.
Yeah, we're talking prophecies about Babylon, Moab, Ethiopia, like all these ancient nations.
It's like a geopolitical thriller,
Yeah.
ancient world edition.
Exactly. And it's not just history, right? There are some seriously mind-blowing themes here about divine judgment, consequences of pride and idolatry.
Oh yeah, but also, glimmers of hope and redemption too. It's a really fascinating mix.
Totally. So get ready to be transported back in time, A and D, is see how these ancient words might still speak to us today. Okay, so first up, Babylon. Isaiah really doesn't hold back when describing its downfall.
No, he does not.
I mean, he talks about destruction from the Almighty and Babylon is fallen. It's fallen. It's intense.
Yeah, it's he uses such vivid imagery to really drive home the point that no earthly power, no matter how mighty, can stand against God's judgment.
And it's not just about Babylon, right? It's like a warning for any nation or empire that thinks it's invincible.
Exactly. It's a timeless reminder that, pride comes before the fall. And even today, we see empires rise and fall, right?
So true. Okay, then there's that whole thing about Lucifer falling from heaven.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Super dramatic. But is Isaiah talking about a literal king here, or is this more of a symbolic representation of, like, evil in general?
It's been debated for centuries, actually. Some scholars see it as a direct reference to the king of Babylon, with all his ambition and pride leading to his downfall.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But others interpret it more symbolically as a commentary on the nature of evil itself, personified in this figure of Lucifer.
So, like, a cautionary tale against the dangers of pride and rebelling against God.
Precisely. Either way, it's a powerful message.
It really makes you think. Okay, moving on, we come to Moab in chapters 15 and 16. And it's interesting because we see these prophecies of destruction, but then there's this really compassionate statement from God, my heart shall cry out for Moab.
Right. There's that tension between judgment and compassion that you see throughout Isaiah's message.
Yeah, it's like even in judgment, there's this sense of heartbreak.
Exactly. And I think it's a reminder that God's desire is not just to punish,
Yeah.
it's to call people back to himself, to restore what's been broken.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, next up, Damascus and Ethiopia. Again, we see warnings against forgetting God, which is, well, always relevant, I guess.
Always.
But what really struck me was that detail about Ethiopia being a land of tall and smooth-skinned people.
Yeah, those little details that really bring the text to life,
Totally. They remind us that these were real people living in a real place facing real consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even though Damascus and Ethiopia both face judgment for turning away from God, there's also this subtle hint that they'll eventually be part of his bigger plan of redemption.
Oh, interesting. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Right. It's like even in these pronouncements of judgment, there's a seed of hope being planted.
Yeah.
God's plans extend beyond, national boundaries and historical periods. It's a big picture kind of thing.
Okay, I like that. So then we come to Egypt and Cush in chapters 19 and 20. And for me, the downfall of Egypt's idols and false gods really stands out here. It's like Isaiah's driving home the point that placing your trust in anything other than the one true God is, well, a recipe for disaster.
It sure is.
And what's really remarkable is how chapter 19 ends. Instead of focusing on destruction, it points toward a future where Egypt, Assyria, and Israel, all former enemies, are blessed by God.
Yeah, it's a beautiful picture of reconciliation.
Totally. It's like God's vision for the world is way more expansive than our limited human perspectives,
Absolutely.
So awesome. But hold on, we're not done with Babylon just yet.
Oh, no, not even close.
In chapter 21, we get another powerful image of Babylon's downfall, this echoing refrain, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. It's almost like
it's reverberating through history.
Yeah, exactly. It's a reminder that no empire, no matter how mighty, can escape the consequences of its actions.
It sends chills down your spine, doesn't it?
It totally does. Okay, so last up for this part of our deep dive, Jerusalem and Tyre in chapters 22 and 23. What really hit me here was the rebuke of Jerusalem's leaders for their arrogance and lack of repentance. It's like even God's chosen people aren't exempt from the consequences of their choices.
Right. It's a powerful reminder that everyone is accountable.
For sure. And then you have Tyre, this incredibly wealthy trading city that's condemned for its greed and exploitation. It's like, How often do we prioritize material wealth and power over things like justice and compassion?
It's a question worth pondering.
It really is. Welcome back. Man, those prophecies about Babylon and Tyre talk about a reality check.
Right.
It's like Isaiah's really driving home the point that pride and greed, they don't end well.
Yeah.
But we've also seen those hints of hope, like even amidst judgment, God's plan is ultimately about redemption.
That's a really good point. Yeah. It's like a tapestry, right? You see these dark moments of judgment, but there's also those threads of grace and mercy woven in there too.
Exactly. Okay, so uh, I want to go back to Tyre for a second.
Okay.
Chapter 23. Tyre was this major power player,
Yeah. A hub of
like a bustling center of trade and commerce, kind of like the New York City or London of its day.
exactly very cosmopolitan, connected to the whole world.
Right. But Isaiah seems to be suggesting that they've fallen into the trap of believing their own hype.
Yeah, it's that classic, more concerned with wealth and status than anything else.
So, given how powerful Tyre was, do they listen to Isaiah's warning?
Well, Isaiah, he does predict a period of judgment for Tyre, like a time of exile and hardship. But then,
Okay.
there's this interesting twist.
What's that?
He says that after 70 years, Tyre will sing as a harlot, like it'll return to its former glory.
Sing as a harlot. Okay. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's sparked a lot of debate.
Right.
Some scholars see it as kind of a sarcastic jab,
Yeah.
like suggesting that Tyre's restored prosperity will be built on the same shaky foundation.
So maybe not a happy ending after all.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's more like they might end up repeating the same mistakes. Like that true
Yeah.
transformation, it requires more than just outward success.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about aligning your heart with a greater purpose.
exactly a change of heart, not just circumstances.
Right, right. And that brings us back to one of the central themes of these chapters, right? The sovereignty of God over the nations. Like no kingdom, no empire, no matter how powerful, can escape the consequences of its actions. It's not just about acknowledging God's power, though, right?
No, it's about understanding his character, his justice, his mercy, his desire for setting things right.
And that's where the whole idea of redemption comes in, right?
Yeah, like even when things seem bleak, God's always offering a way back,
Yeah.
a path toward healing and wholeness.
Okay, so are there specific examples of this in these chapters?
Well, we talked about how Egypt and Assyria, even though they face judgment, they're included in God's plan for blessing, right?
Yeah.
But there's this amazing passage in chapter 19, verses 23 to 25, that describe a time when Egypt, Assyria, and Israel, like these former enemies, they'll all be united in worship of the one true God.
Wow, that's powerful. Like a glimpse into what true reconciliation could look like.
Right. And it reminds us that even when things seem hopeless, God's working behind the scenes, bringing people together, breaking down barriers.
That's seriously inspiring. But I got to be honest, it's hard sometimes to square these grand prophecies, with all the messiness of the world today.
Yeah,
How do we apply these ancient pronouncements to our modern context?
That's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it starts by recognizing that God's perspective is way bigger than ours.
Okay.
He's not just concerned with individual lives, but the whole scope of human history.
So it's like a long game.
Exactly, and that requires a lot of trust and humility, right? We're not in control, but I don't always have all the answers, but we can trust that God's at work.
Oh, okay. So, but it's not just about passively waiting for God to do everything.
No, not at all. We have a role to play.
Sure.
We're invited to be part of that story, to be agents of reconciliation and healing in our own lives. To fight for justice, to show compassion, to be peacemakers.
So it's about embodying those values in our daily lives,
Yeah.
even the small things.
Absolutely. Sometimes those small acts of love and kindness can have ripple effects that we never could have imagined.
Wow. Okay, so I feel like we've covered so much ground already, and I can't believe we're only halfway through exploring chapters 13 through 23.
I know, it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, but before we dive into the final part of this deep dive, I want to ask you this. All right, welcome back. Part 3 of our Isaiah deep dive. Still buzzing from those prophecies, gotta say.
Me too, me too.
Okay, so we left off talking about how like those grand themes of judgment and redemption can feel kind of hard to relate to, in our world today.
Right.
But you were going to say something about like how those prophecies might actually speak to our own time.
Yeah, it's definitely a question that gets you thinking. Like if Isaiah were around today, what would he be saying? What nations or issues would he be focused on?
Right, like it's a whole different world now than back then.
For sure. But I think there are some core themes in these chapters that they kind of transcend time and culture.
Okay, so what are some of those timeless themes?
Well, one of the biggest ones I think is the danger of pride and idolatry. Like over and over again in these chapters, we see nations and empires getting so caught up in their own power and wealth that they lose sight of what really matters.
And that ultimately leads to their downfall.
Yeah, pride has a way of, blinding us to our own weaknesses. Makes us think we don't need anything or anyone else.
So if Isaiah were here today, where would he see that kind of pride?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think he might point to the way we often kind of elevate human achievement, like technology and progress, almost to a godlike status.
Oh, you mean like putting all our faith in progress and innovation as if they hold all the answers?
Yeah, exactly. Like we're obsessed with growth and pushing boundaries, which isn't always a bad thing, but it's easy to forget about the human cost, you know?
Yeah. Like we see that in so many ways, right? Like environmental damage, economic inequality, all in the name of progress.
Right. And I think Isaiah would challenge us to ask ourselves, like, is this pursuit of progress really aligned with a greater purpose?
And are we considering everyone? Like the well-being of all people and the planet.
Exactly. Or are we just sacrificing those things for our own ambition?
That's a sobering thought. It makes you realize that idolatry isn't just about like bowing down to statues. It can be way more subtle than that.
For sure. It could be anything that we allow to consume us,
Yeah.
to become more important than our relationship with God.
So it could be our careers, our possessions, even our political ideologies.
Yeah, anything that we allow to define us.
Okay, so pride and idolatry, those are definitely things Isaiah would be talking about today. What else?
Well, another big theme is justice and righteousness. God judges the nations for their oppression, for how they treat the poor and vulnerable.
And I bet Isaiah would be just as concerned about those things today.
Oh, absolutely. I think he'd be calling us to stand up for the marginalized, to speak out against injustice, to really fight for a world where everyone's treated with dignity and respect.
It's a reminder that faith isn't passive.
Right.
It's about taking action, about putting our beliefs into practice.
Exactly. It's about aligning our lives with God's heart for justice and mercy, being a voice for the voiceless.
Okay, so it's not enough to just, talk about these things. We have to actually go and do something.
We're called to be agents of change, to actually be the hands and feet of God's love in the world.
So we've talked about pride, idolatry, justice, righteousness. Anything else stand out to you?
Well, one thing that strikes me is that even with all the judgment and pronouncements of doom, there's also this thread of hope that runs through these chapters. Isaiah points toward a future where God's kingdom is fully realized, where all nations are united.
And that's a vision that still inspires people today, right? It's a reminder that things can get better, that a better world is possible.
I believe so. And I think Isaiah would encourage us to never give up on that vision, to never lose hope, even when things feel dark and chaotic.
So it's about holding on to that tension, right?
Yeah.
Between the reality of the world we live in and the hope for a better future.
Exactly. And I think that's where faith comes in. It's about trusting that God's working even when we can't see it.
Okay, yeah. It's about like remembering to zoom out to see the bigger picture.
And to remember that we have a role to play in that picture. We're
Yeah.
not just, sitting on the sidelines. We're invited to participate, to be part of bringing about God's kingdom.
Well, I think we've come full circle back to that question about how Isaiah might speak to our own time.
We have, and honestly, we've only scratched the surface.
Right. Like there's so much in these chapters.
But hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners, a taste of how powerful and relevant Isaiah's message still is.
And maybe even inspired them to explore these these prophecies for themselves.
That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Well, until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep seeking truth.
And may the words of Isaiah continue to inspire us on our journeys.
Thanks for joining us.